All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to another future-focused weekly update where we are bridging the gap between business, technology, and human experience with the stated goal of keeping you 10 steps ahead. I think I have that intro relatively consistent, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep it spicy and maybe shake it up every once in a while. All that said, I hope you've had a wonderful week. Things are going well. As usual, I'm going to run through some of the top things that have been on my mind as I've made it through the week, keep you informed on things. If this is your first time listening, thanks for tuning in. I hope you find it helpful. Send me feedback. If you don't, I'm always open to grow and develop and change things. If you've been listening for a while, thanks for sticking with me. And also feel free to share feedback if there's things you'd like, or if there's articles or topics that you want me to cover, please let me know. And if you would, please like, share, comment, do all that good stuff. Share it with a friend if you think something in here is interesting and they might find it beneficial. Let me know. Okay, with that, I want to get into it because I've got 5 like I normally do. Now, the first one I caught, I think it was earlier this week sometime, where there's this whole viral thing going on right now where ChatGPT, okay, there's this sea of cover letters for job applications that is just, it's going viral because essentially what's happening is people are using ChatGPT to create a cover letter and they're just not even paying attention to it. And they're just copying it and pasting it. And so talent acquisition and recruiters are posting about this going, are you kidding me? Like yet another one. And it's blatantly obvious that these things are copy and pasted. You know, they've still got the little like brackets where you're supposed to enter your name and, said skills and what, enter what interests you about the job type of a thing. So this is pure laziness, which the one thing that now, one of the entertaining parts of this was I saw something that a founder got up in arms on this, and people joke that you should just send a AI generated letter back to the person about it. I think the thing that's interesting is it's caused some spark about generative AI and the fingers kind of being pointed at generative AI for doing this. And I don't know that it's fully fair that Gen AI is taking the heat for this because people have been doing this for a long time. You could Google cover letter and maybe it was a little more difficult to do it because if you just copy and pasted it. But I mean, I know as a hiring manager for many years, I've gotten some pretty obvious copy paste generic cover letters and resumes from people that I went, did you even bother? It still has the wrong job name in the thing. I'm so excited to learn more about XYZ job. And you're like, well, that's not the job we'd be talking about. So I don't know who you're talking to. Or the name's different. Hi, Jonathan. Like, well, I'm not Jonathan. So I'm not apparently who you intended. So it's not generative AI that is causing this. And there was another article, I was going to include it in this week. I didn't, but it was talking about the impact that Gen AI is having on human behavior. And what I will say, why I do think this is worth drawing attention to is, I do think generative AI is making it easier for this kind of lazy behavior. And it's giving the false sense that being lazy will have no consequences. And I think some of that goes back to the way Gen AI is positioned as this hyper intelligent. It's 1,000 degrees more intelligent than a human being. It has more access to information than anyone on the planet. And so there's a natural tendency to go, well, if I did it with ChatGPT or with Gen AI, it's going to be good. And that's not the case. And so if you're someone who's not quite there or hasn't had one of these bad experiences, please use your critical thinking skills when you use Gen AI. Do not just take whatever it has and copy and paste it. Whether it's a cover letter, whether it's a social media post, whether it whatever you're doing with it. One, people's acumen for this is starting to elevate. So maybe in early 2023, you might have been able to get away with it and people might have just assumed it was a minor clerical error. But like when your first sentence opens with, I'm going to delve into the blah, 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 you're like, okay, you literally just copied this from ChatGPT. And people can tell the way AI writes, the way it says things, it's just not how normal human beings speak. And we're seeing more and more that honestly, kind of the just faultiness, the brokenness of people is actually what makes us stand out. Is like we make mistakes, we word things weird, and it's not, we make, I don't know. So anyway, just be really careful with this. Now, one of the things that I think is disappointing is some of the backlash on this is, of course, people going, this is why Gen AI is bad, and this, you should never use Gen AI to help you write a cover letter. Here's my take on this. Could you use ChatGPT or Anthropic? Whenever I say ChatGPT, it's kind of like saying Google. You just mean search. If you're going to use Gen AI for a cover letter, I would actually encourage you to, because the sheer activity of writing a cover letter and even tailoring a cover letter for a specific job is a very robotic, mundane activity. And you're going to screw it up because you're going to go, I'm on cruise control. I don't really want to be doing this right now. I've done this for like the 7th job in a row, and I'm just literally tippy tapping, and you're actually going to make bigger mistakes. So would I encourage people to go out, use Gen AI and go, here's the job description. But use it like you're talking to an assistant or an intern. I'd like to write a cover letter for this job. These are some of the skills I want to highlight. Here's the job description. Can you please make sure that you're calling attention to certain things with this? Like, give it clear, robust instructions on what you want to do. And then after it spits it out, don't just copy and paste it. Read it, edit it, revise it, make it sound like something that is authentic to you. If you do that, you're fine. And so do the critics of this whole instance going, this is why Gen AI is bad and nobody should ever do this. And I would never hire someone who would use ChatGPT for a cover letter. If you truly are never going to hire someone who uses ChatGPT for a cover letter, you actually are bad at business, because you actually have a bias against AI, so much so that you would rather have people waste their time and create a lower quality product simply because you don't like AI. You don't want to be in that camp. Do you want to be in the camp of, no, I don't want people who mindlessly use AI and don't use the critical thinking skills and their skills and talents that I hired them for, and instead make critical errors like sending cover letters with blank filler boxes. Yeah, that's a perfectly legitimate position to have. So if you're a hiring manager, yeah, if somebody sends you one of those, probably not somebody you want to put through a couple rounds of interviews, because they clearly don't really care and aren't really interested in taking the time to do it. At the same time, maybe still do some research on them, because anybody who's looked for a job knows how much of a soul-crushing activity that can be. And maybe after getting ghosted by 2,000 companies, talent acquisition organizations, I'm speaking to you, not getting any response, not having anybody call them back, maybe they just are tired. And so maybe don't just completely write them off. Maybe give them the benefit of the doubt that, you know what, honest mistake, just like we all make honest mistakes, do a little digging on them, maybe have a conversation. Now, if you have a conversation and they treat it the same way as the cover letter, well, then that's a different story. But if you're a job seeker, please don't hear these things and then think I should never use Gen AI for this kind of stuff. And somehow my cover letter is of better quality if I write and physically use my fingers to tippy tap every keystroke into the keyboard of it. It doesn't produce a better product. It's a less efficient, less effective use of your time. So use it, but use it intelligently. Be thoughtful in your prompts. Your prompts might actually end up being longer than the cover letter, and that's okay, because you want to work with it. You want to need it. You want to do all this stuff. It's a great opportunity to practice OpenAI's Canvas. Try it out. Say, make a canvas. I want to create a cover letter. Let's get started on that. Have it start. Tell it the job description. Have it edit it. Revise the things that don't make sense. But the best product comes when you actually lean in and you work together with it. You team up and you figure out how to do it. The kind of crap we're seeing, it bothers me a ton. And I agree with it. And I think it's ridiculous. And if you're the one perpetuating this stuff, please stop. not only are you giving AI a bad name, but you're also just giving job seekers a bad name because they already get stereotyped and branded as, certain things. And that's why they don't have a job and all these other things. And then this kind of crap comes up and it just fuels these stereotypes that, yep, see, this is how people who are unemployed are. They do this kind of stuff. And we don't need that. We don't need that. Chances are most of these things are either bots. By the way, there are people who are paying for bots just to do things. Here's another reason why you don't just get a bot to take care of things for you and trust it'll be fine. Because there's a good chance it's sending out cover letters like this that are going to make sure you never get called back. And talent acquisition people talk, and you don't want this label associated with you. So be careful, folks. Be careful, folks, but also don't completely write off Gen AI, or you may be that finance person that still insists on doing long form division when there's Excel and a calculator. And you don't want to be that person either. All right, moving on. This one actually wasn't so much techie, but it tied to the first topic. I came across an article. If you didn't know this, I think everybody knows who Al Pacino is. I'm not even going to pretend or try and do an impression of him. But the Godfather, right? Al Pacino. And I came across this story, which was relevant to this first one I talked about, which was, if you didn't know, Al Pacino in his 70s went from have a net worth of like $50 million or something like this to flat broke, like nothing to his name. Okay. He's in his 80s now. He's since, recovered from this, but I came across this and was reading the story of it. And it's a really tragic story. It truly is a tragic story of what happened, his rise to the irony of it. His dad was an accountant, like this whole thing. And the reason it ties to the previous story and why I connected the two was what happened was, as Al's career took off and he started being more and more successful, he started taking his eye off of things. He even acknowledges in this article, like, I didn't even sign my own checks. I never even logged into my bank. I had people doing my finances. I never even checked in. I just assumed everything would just be fine. And I bring this story up, especially on the heels of the previous one, to reinforce the point that Gen AI is not the problem. Our natural human tendencies and behaviors are the problem. And when we take our eye off the ball, when we delegate things we shouldn't be delegating, or when we completely say, I'm going to delegate this and not even bother to ever even check back in on it, that's a problem. And you're going to end up with some serious consequences. And Al Pacino's story is an exact perfect example of that. And it had nothing to do with technology. It's not because he bought an AI bot to trade his money and it disappeared. He had people take care of his finances for him. He had real estate agents manage all his properties. He had all this stuff. And before he knew it, people were taking advantage of him. They were spending his money. They were doing stuff with his money. And pretty soon, when he finally managed to go, I wonder how I'm doing financially, and he looks into it, there's nothing left. And it's a really heartbreaking story, and one that's avoidable in that he had to go back to ground zero. Now, credit to Al on this one. I had mad respect for his story in this, and I think it speaks to just his character and who he is as a person. But he didn't let it get him. I mean, it got him down. But he didn't let him bury him 6 feet under. He humbled himself. I mean, Al Pacino, the Godfather, one of the most A-list celebrities out there, had nothing. And he had to go back. I was reading through some of this stuff. He's like, I took movies that were terrible movies. I took pay for, stuff that I did stuff. He's like, but I figured it out. I figured out I could use my experience and I could start doing public speaking, and I started doing these other things, and slowly he built things back up. And I think that can also be an encouragement to folks who maybe have made some really stupid decisions, or maybe you took your eye off the ball at work and you lost your job. Granted, there's lots of people who lose their job and it has nothing to do with how they behaved. So I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype, but there's also examples of people who they kind of weren't, they were on cruise control and just kind of showing up and punching the clock and heading home. And when all of a sudden the organization had to say, who could we do without, that name came up on the list. And that does happen. And I'm not going to pretend that nobody who's ever been laid off ever wasn't actually performing to the company's standards. No, it happens a lot. It's not everybody's story, but it does happen. And that might be you, but you could recover from it. So don't be discouraged. Don't be frustrated. Don't feel like the world is over. Al's story is great. He literally went from, he had it all to literally nothing, and nothing in his 70s. I mean, that's rough. That's rough. It's rough when you're in your, 40s or 30s. It's rough in your, I don't know that there's ever a season where you're like, you know what, if I was going to lose it all and have to start from the ground up, I'd love it to be at this time. But the guy had like peaked in his career. Now he's like hoping to sail off into the sunset in his 70s, and only to find out, oh, it's all gone. So if you're discouraged, if you're going through a rough season, take encouragement in that. If the Godfather can lose it all and come back, you know what? You can as well. And, I will, for those of you who follow me, my worldview, that it's more than just pull yourself up by the bootstraps in my book. There's something bigger to it than that. But you also have a responsibility. And I'm a firm believer that it's not just, well, it's out of my hands, it's in God's, so I'm just going to sit here and do no. You also are an active participant, and you are accountable for being a participant. So if you're in the dirt right now, what can you do about it? How can you focus your attention? And maybe humility. That was one of the things that I thought was so interesting reading the story, was how he really had to humble himself, and he had to be willing to go, yeah, maybe that's who I was, and maybe that is where I was, but I'm not there now. And I can't act that way. And if I act that way, I'm just going to stay broke forever. And I just don't want to stay broke forever. But I think the other thing, and then I'll close out on this one, that I think this really highlights is, my kids joke with me all the time that Ecclesiastes is my favorite book. And it probably is. But I think that was one of the other things is life. It says meaningless. The translation, I like the translation of vapor. And I think it's just a much better example of what it's getting at, is everything we have, it's truly a vapor. And his story is a perfect example of this. A-list celeb, had everything anybody probably ever dreams of having, and it was gone in an instant. And so if you're on the other end, okay, I said something to the folks who maybe lost their job or are struggling, going through a rough season. You might be on the other end. You might be flying high, money in the bank. Everything looks great. Everything looks secure. You think, I've got my retirement planned. Everything's going. Don't hold firmly to that. Don't hold tightly to that and think you can control it, because you can't. And it can all be gone in an instant. And I had an example of somebody I was talking with the other day. I was catching up with him. It was just a sad story. It was somebody who had worked for multiple decades with a company, had worked there, had built a pension. They just really had banked their retirement on this. And 3 months before retirement, they laid them off. And they also eliminated all of the retirement plan stuff that this individual had been banking on. And so let's just say their whole plans for what retirement was going to look like and how they were going to sail off into the sunset here didn't pan out that way. So be careful. Be very careful where you're putting your hope, because it can vaporize very quickly. And Gen AI ain't going to save you. A great stock investor ain't going to save you. There's just that doesn't work. It doesn't hold water. So be careful, folks. But I think it's an encouraging story to know, because honestly, where he is now and what he's done, it's really, truly awesome. So if you're having a down day, go look up the Al Pacino story and how he rebounded from going broke, and maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better. All right, on to number 3. I look forward to the day where I don't have to talk about return to office again. And we just kind of, again, not that I'm saying everybody should be remote, or not that I'm encouraging that everybody needs to be hybrid or the office is bad. That's not my point. But gosh, the news about this stuff is just irritating, and it keeps popping up. Now, if you haven't heard the latest one, Walmart and 3M are the two big companies now in the news who are on the return to office train. So 3M is demanding that all its directors and above are in the office. If they're within, I think, 50 miles, they have to be in so many days. Walmart is making a big push to get all the corporate employees to Bentonville, Arkansas, which probably is not on a lot of people's like best places to live list. And as a result, right, all the hullabaloo is flying around. People are upset. But one of the articles I came across where I went, good for you, and I think we need to see more of this, is Walmart's chief technology officer. They responded by going, no, I'm done. I'm not playing this game. And I was so encouraged by that, because it often doesn't happen at the most senior levels. Oftentimes it's the senior folks who are pushing this stuff at the expense of the folks that they feel that they have the power over to push this down on them. And so to have Walmart's CTO go, this is dumb, I'm not moving to Bentonville, and if that's what your mandate is going to be, then I quit. And I hope we see more senior leaders do this. And the reason I hope we see more senior leaders do this is I'm extremely empathetic to the fact that there are probably a lot of people, not probably, I know there are a lot of people, because I talk to a lot of people who wish they could just do that. Honestly, the volume of people I talk to, and just even from some studies and surveys and things that I've read, who, if they could, would just say, you know what? Screw you. I'm done. If this is how you're going to treat me, I'm out. I just talked to somebody the other day. They were literally hired as a remote employee 6 years ago. So pre-pandemic, they were hired as a remote employee. Recently, we're just told you're going to need to relocate to one of our hubs and be in the office 5 days a week. And there was no like, we've changed the requirements of your job, so if you don't want to do this, you can take a severance and go. It was just, this is what it is. This is the new expectation of your job, which if you're in that situation, I don't know your financial situation, but I do encourage people, if you've got a few $100, find an employment attorney if you're digging into some of this stuff, because there are certain things that companies can do and certain things they can't. And if they fundamentally change your job, there are certain legal restrictions in how far they can go with that and what rights you have as an employee. Now, it may not be that they can't do this to you. Okay, so I want to be really careful. And by the way, I'll just add this little like fine print underneath. I am not a lawyer. I am not giving legal advice. I am not telling you what to do from a legal standpoint. Please talk to an attorney. Don't say, well, Christopher Lynn said, because I'll go, hey, I said I wasn't a lawyer. But I've had my own share of conversations with employment attorneys. By the way, there are lots of very nice ones out there. It's kind of like therapists. Don't be afraid to go talk to an employment attorney. Pay a couple $100, have a conversation, learn a few things. It'll take you a long ways. But there are certain things that companies can and can't do. And I will tell you right now, HR and companies are not going to tell you those things. They are going to go out of their way to make sure they don't fully and transparently represent the rights that you have as an employee. Now, like I said, if you think that means you can stick your feet in the ground and go, you can't tell me I have to come into the office, they can, but how they do it, the options you have if they decide to do that, and the path that you can take forward, there's a lot more flexibility in this. And I can tell you in many cases, a company will prefer to settle or find a mutual agreement for something than have to risk dealing with going to court. Now, I caution people. I was talking to somebody this week about this, where they were saying, I'm thinking of possibly going head to head with a company and making a legal case. And they went through the story with me. And again, I said, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my legal advice, talk to a lawyer. But my feedback, my coaching to them was, I would caution you to think carefully about this. Because if you're going to stick your feet in and potentially threaten legal action, you better be prepared for a fight, and you better be prepared for a David and Goliath story. And it might not be one where the stone hits them square in the head and you get to, lop off their head. Like, it might not work that way. Because they've got more money, they've got more legal power. Especially in the United States, things are very much in their favor. So there's not going to be there may not be the happy ending that you think you for sure have. And the first thing I would ask anybody who's considering this is, make sure you're being really, really objective about this. Because I have talked to many people over the years where, let's just say, they're not seeing things clearly and they're convinced they have a case and they think something is something that even I have had to say, I love you as a friend, but I actually don't. I would side with the company on this. I don't think you actually would win this. And I don't think there's a lot of evidence for this. So just be really careful, but it might be worth it if you are in a situation like this to get some legal advice on things like this. You may still have to leave your job. You may have to look for something else, but there may be a way you can do that and find some sort of mutual benefit between you and the company if you're going to do that. So anyway, if you have questions on that, you can reach out. I'll talk about it, on a more private level, because without knowing people's situations, I'm very cautious about how I approach this, because I've given wildly different advice depending on people's situations. There is not a one universal answer for how to do this. But all of that tied back to the fact that I'm encouraged to see a senior leader doing it. And I think we need to see more senior leaders doing this. So if you're listening or watching this and you're a senior leader, I would actually challenge you, if this kind of stuff does bother you, you are probably in a position to actually make an impact that many of the people underneath you or in other parts of the organization don't have the opportunity to do. You probably have more access to the finances to survive. If things, if you need to quit unexpectedly, you probably are in a better position to fight them legally. Certainly, as the Walmart article contends, you're going to get more press and it's going to draw a lot more heat to the company than if John or Jane Doe in accounting leaves. No, they're not going to write an article up on Yahoo and Business Insider because Jill left accounting because she couldn't take it anymore. The CTO of Walmart leaves in response to this. It's a media storm. And so if you're a senior leader who's seen some of this bullying behavior and you go, I don't like this and I'm not going to participate in this and I'm going to send a message, I'd encourage you to do it. I did it once in an organization and it sent a very strong message all the way up to the CEO. I still ended up leaving the organization, but I stayed in touch with people in the organization who said, what I did made a big impact and it changed the culture of things by doing it. So if you are in a position to do it and you can, I would encourage senior leaders, put your money where your mouth is. If you say you really care about leadership, you really care about the well-being of your employees, then take action. And if not, well, then keep your mouth shut, because you're part of the problem then if you're participating in this. And again, I don't say that saying everybody needs to be remote or companies never have reason to have people relocate or live close to a hub. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is where we are right now is literally sheer ridiculousness. And I've seen less childlike behavior when I was in elementary school, middle school teacher, than I'm seeing in corporate America right now, as C-suite executives are pounding their chest and stomping their feet going, you will come back in the office or else. Like, what? What are you doing? What kind of model are you trying to set? And what are the implications you're going to have on the rest of your organization in how they treat people, the performance. It just disgusts me, to be completely honest. So Walmart CTO, if by chance you ever happen to see us, I'd love to have a virtual coffee and give you a virtual high five for doing what you did. I think it's fantastic. And I hope it sends a message to some of these other organizations. And I'd love to see more of these articles from senior leaders standing up and going, no, I'm not going to participate in this madness. And I'm going to send a message very clearly that I'm not on board, because that's the only way we're going to push against this. And like I said, that's not me saying, let's push against this so everyone can be remote. No, to the haters who keep commenting on my stuff, telling me all you care about is remote work. No, it's not. No, it's not. But what we're seeing right now is not treating people decently. Okay, on to number 4. This one really broke my heart for a number of reasons. So I came across this article. You've heard me talk about death bots and, ghost bots, how people are resurrecting their lost loved ones with AI and all this other stuff. And that's intentional. And I think it's extremely dangerous. Okay. And I would caution anybody, go listen to my other episodes where I talk about it. That's when you're choosing to do it. And I've seen the destruction that it causes. The article I came across this week was of a dad who, through a notification, found out that some random user had taken the likeness of his daughter, who was tragically murdered by her boyfriend in high school, and made a caricature of her on character.ai. And he was furious, rightfully so, absolutely furious, as his deceased daughter is now, and there's a whole, and let me give some clarity before people completely fly off the rails on this. Okay. The thing, like, no hating on character AI. I don't need people going and like blowing them up or anything like that. It's not like the avatar, the character was represented as this high school girl and she's telling her story of living on after being murdered by her. It wasn't that. And I'm not saying that to downplay the severity of this, but I don't want people hearing the headline of it and then reacting when they don't have the full story. So the full story is, it wasn't like character AI was representing this deceased girl as who she really was. But somehow the dad got a notification, goes out to it, goes, that's my daughter. That is her likeness. That is her yearbook picture. That is her voice. That is everything about her. And it's almost like he saw his dead daughter now as an actor, I guess would be the best example I could give of it, is like you thought your kid died and all of a sudden you watch a movie and they're a character in the movie and you're like, what is this? How did this happen? And he's furious. I mean, he's absolutely furious because he just wants it to stop. And he goes, how can stuff like this happen? Like, how can someone without my consent or whatever take my adolescent daughter's likeness, turn it into a character? And the character, let me look at it. It was like, I think it would make me even more mad. It was like, there's this whole profile of who it was. And it was like, oh yeah, here it is. A knowledgeable and friendly AI persona and a video game journalist. But the character thing was written in the first person. And so it's written like Jennifer is the name, oh, I like to geek out on video games, technology, and pop culture. All of which he was like, that's not it at all. Like it. So this is the part where it's a little weird because I dug into it a little bit more. Well, it didn't openly state this is the girl and this is what she liked. There were unique character traits about her that this character AI had pulled into the avatar now. And so, yeah, I mean, it just made me really sad. And it made me concerned about the lack of regulations and just governance around some of this stuff and safeguards, the lack of safeguards we have for some of this. Because here the dad is already grieving at this horrific tragedy that happened to his daughter that he still hasn't fully processed. And he has moved on to try and like carry her memory on through a nonprofit he started. So he's already doing his own things to carry her forward, which one of which is not creating an AI ghost version of her to pretend she's still alive. He's actually dealing with the grief in a healthy way. And then he gets completely blindsided by somebody who decided to make something that was her and for entertainment purposes. And I'm sure if you found the person who created it, they'd say, well, I thought it was harmless. What's I didn't say who she was. I didn't say this was the story. Like, what's the big deal? And to somebody who might have that mentality and go, well, what's the big deal? Who's it actually hurting? Here's a perfect example. It does hurt people. Like this whole turning people into AI for entertainment purposes, it has real consequences. Now, granted, character AI, kudos to them. They quickly removed the bot. They said it violates the policy. This is not something that we want. It's not something we support. So fortunately, this isn't like the kind of situation I talked about before where like the court journalist all of a sudden got wrapped up in something. And now AI is saying he committed all the crimes that he wrote about. And he's like, what do I do? And they go, well, there's nothing we can do about it because it's not really a person that did it. But it's something that, hey, be careful. And things do have consequences. And I think one action, people can take, because I think this is going to become kind of tying to this whole theme of like not setting yourself on cruise control. I think it's going to be important that people start to, Google yourself every once in a while, see what pops up, make sure that your likeness isn't being used in ways that isn't okay or is inappropriate. If you're somebody who sees a likeness of something, I've said this before, if you see a picture of something, a video of something, slow down before you react, because this is becoming so easy to do. Clearly, like in this example, whoever created the avatar of this girl, random person creates a character, like it's that easy to do. And so to think that'll never happen to me, that'll never happen to anybody I know, that'll never affect me. Well, it might. And this dad found out the hard way, what can happen. So be careful. If you're out there, keep an eye on things of yourself and those you love, because this kind of stuff can happen. And I think we're in a whole new age of, people used to be so worried about protecting your social security number. And then it was like, well, you got to protect your email address. You got to protect your passwords. Now you got to protect your likeness. And I am guessing, if I were to make a prediction, which we'll see how long it takes, and maybe this already exists, but I'm guessing we're going to see identity protection extending to voice and likeness is going to become something that will probably kind of like, what was that service, LifeLock? Was that the guy who he like drove around with a truck with his social security number on it? Just stupid. I mean, it was a good marketing campaign. But anyway, I have a feeling we're going to see that kind of stuff where it's like, well, you want to protect your likeness. You want to protect your voice, your image, your, all this other stuff, so that it doesn't get used like that. But right now, there's not a whole lot of regulation around it. There's not a whole lot of rules. So you're only going to be able to fix it when you catch it. And so keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, be on the lookout for this stuff. And if you're somebody who thinks this is harmless or you would just do it with entertainment, can I just challenge you right now? It's not. Don't. It's not funny. It's not cute. It's not, harm, it doesn't hurt anybody. It's all just for fun. It's not. And real people do get hurt, and it affects people in ways you may never, ever predict. And the other thing, while this may be a pseudo happy ending because he just contacted them, they took the bot down, I've seen plenty of stories already where the ending does not end that happily under normal circumstances. And so you may cause a lot more damage than you even intended. So please, please don't. All right. Finally, last one. Chipotle is all over the news. They're going big on AI recruiting, like big. They've got, I think the name of their AI recruiter, I think is Avocado. I thought that was pretty clever. To be fair, I was like, that's cute. I like that. And it's, it's a person, not really, but a person that you interview with, and its name is Avocado. And it's gotten a lot of mixed reviews. There's a lot of people who are like, I don't like this AI recruiting. And there are some very legitimate, if you listen to any of my stuff on AI recruiting, I think I talked about it just last week. I did a big talk with HR leaders about this to try and influence CHROs and talent acquisition leaders about how they think about it, because there are some very legitimate concerns. But as I was reading a lot of the media around it and a lot of people's reactions to it, it was very negative. It was very negative. A lot of people saying, I don't like this. I would stand against this. I'm never going to eat at Chipotle. You always get the P. I'm never going to eat at Chipotle again, as they're like eating a burrito bowl. I would never work for them, all these things. And here's the thing. I said last week when I talked about AI and recruiting, it's coming. Okay. So if you say I would never work for a company that uses AI in recruiting, well, you're never going to work for any companies then, because I'm telling you right now, there's AI all over in recruiting right now. Maybe you're not interviewing with a bot, but believe me, AI is all over the recruiting processes today. So you might not have a job if you're going to make that kind of bold statement. But I think what was interesting is I dug into how Chipotle is looking at using this and the specific use cases they have. They talked about some of the seasonality of Chipotle and how they go through these, I think they call it burrito season is actually what they term it. They go through like burrito season where in the fall, which makes sense as everybody's going back to college and all this stuff, like boom, they have this huge need where it's just packed and they are trying to fill slots for people. And unfortunately, if you don't know how a lot of restaurants are structured, especially these corporate ones, there's not like a nice talent acquisition team that's taking care of all of this for all of the different stores. Sometimes that's the case, but normally it's not. So there's a ton of pressure on the store managers to have to do this themselves. And you go into burrito season, which I can't say without kind of chuckling to myself, but you go into burrito season as the GM or the manager, store manager of Chipotle, and you've got to hire. I mean, the surge was like insane. Like it was absolutely insane how many people they have to recruit. If you're a store manager, and this is not normally a large majority of your time. And so now you get hit with this. You've still got to run your store, but now you're trying to run your restaurant while like trying to recruit and to do all this stuff and all these different things. I would absolutely say this is a perfect use case for AI because kind of like going back to the cover letter, not everything in recruiting requires a human touch or the human touch somehow makes it superior. Okay. And when I look at the kind of job, and then when I dug into it pretty deeply to see how are they using, I was actually really impressed with the thoughtfulness they put into their AI recruiting. By the way, it's not now there's a little bit of a different situation. So we'll see when they turn up the volume, how far they go with it. As it stands today, they are not planning on using AI to take people all the way to like a job offer. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to go through those kind of early stage, like, hey, we need to filter job experience. We need to gather some details about you. We need to find out this. We need to fill out these forms. A lot of the robotic stuff that is involved in recruiting when you're looking at a candidate and trying to figure out whether they're a good fit. Using avocado, I'm not going to be able to get through this one too serious. Using avocado to do that is great. Honestly, I think that's brilliant. There's a ton of stuff, especially for a frontline job where, look, there's not a lot of specialized skills you're looking for. You're looking to gather some basic information. You want to make sure they're not like deranged. You're trying to just see, hey, do they have decent like interpersonal skills and things like that to at least get them to the point of, okay, this person out of the 400 that applied, these 50 seem like really qualified candidates. And I, as a store manager, do not have time to sit down with 300 people. So to the people who go, AI is going to prevent me from getting opportunity, in this case, it actually might not, because you might be able to impress avocado. And if you take the advice I gave you last week on using AI to practice interviewing, you might really be able to nail that interview because you might know exactly what Ava's looking for and know how to interact and not freeze when you're presented with an AI bot and you go, what do I do? You'll have worked your way through it. And so it may open up more opportunity where poor James or Jill store manager goes, I don't have time to talk to all these college kids or these people who are looking to work at Chipotle, and it's too much volume, and they just push the resumes and applications straight into the trash. So I actually see this potentially opening up more opportunity, especially in this use case. They've also done a really good job to define what the roles and responsibilities of avocado are. Avocado, whatever. And I think that's really good. They've clearly thought this through. They've taken the time to understand from the managers, from Chipotle, what are the key things that they need to figure out in those early stages? What information do they need to gather? What kinds of things are they trying to vet through in all of that without going too far? It looks like a very well-balanced and critically thought through approach to using AI for recruiting. So while I see a lot of like hate on this one, I actually was like, I mean, there might be a few tweaks I might make. It's still early. They're just in the experimentation phase. So hard to say. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the company they're using to do their AI recruiting, but it was familiar to me. And I think I've talked with their product officer or something like that. I mean, it's a legit company, right? They're not like Bill and Ted's Gen AI hiring. It wasn't anything like that. It was like a legit AI vendor who does this and has been in the space for a while, is going to show up on some, Gartner report of HR tech companies. So it's not a no-name group that's doing this. And like I said, they've thought it through. They have a clear plan. They're experimenting with it before going wide scale. Honestly, as I looked through their strategy and approach and the problem they were trying to solve, if I were advising them, might there be a few tweaks I'd make, or I don't have enough details to even know whether I'd make tweaks? Yeah, maybe. But overall, I looked at it and went, green thumb from Christopher. So to Chipotle, if anybody from Chipotle hears this, or, you got my stamp of approval, at least from what I can discover and find on how you're using AI for recruiting. And I'm very interested and will be following to see how the results go with some of this stuff. And I think it's actually going to be a really good thing. And one of their stated missions, and I think this is a really important thing that's often missed with bringing AI in. One of their important stated missions in this implementation is to give the store staff, the restaurant staff, more time to focus on their customers and more times for the store managers to focus on their teams. And I'm like, yeah, fantastic. That's exactly what you should be using AI for. Giving you more time to do the things that really matter and focus on this, not more time sitting scanning through 700 applications to try and decide which one you want to call back. And you finally get to a point where you're like, oh, screw it. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so I really, truly think they're going to see some real success with this, which means as they see success, other companies are going to start doing this. And going back to my very earlier point last week and this week, if you think you're not going to have to interview with AI in your lifetime, you are wrong. I will eat my words. Maybe I'll start a competition where I'll take shots of hot sauce every time I make a gamble on what I think is going to happen and I'm wrong. But this is one. I'd bet a whole bottle of my 5 million Scoville hot sauce that I love, by the way. I'll do a shot of it if I'm wrong on this, but I firmly believe we are going to see AI recruiting just explode, and not just it's in the background doing some of this stuff. You're going to be interacting and working with AI. So get ready for it. And like I said, don't wait until you have your first AI interview. Go now. Use advanced voice mode. Go toy around with some of these things. I've got, I won't say it here because it's still not official, but I'm going to be joining a AI organization as an advisory board member to help shape some of this. And one of the areas we're focusing in is how do we use conversational AI for skill development, and how do we help people grow and develop using AI? And this is that same kind of thing. And so anyway, this is a good use. good use. Well done, Chipotle. Be careful though, because boy, if you're a store manager, just make sure, going back to the Al Pacino or the GPT cover letter point, please don't just check out and assume that avocado is going to get all your hiring right. You're the one who's going to have to manage these people. You're the one who's going to have to take care of it. And you're the one who's going to have to spend time with them. So don't delegate all of your hiring responsibilities to avocado, or you will regret that. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. And we will see you on the other side.